about a very special person. And usually we talk about some people that are going to bring us lessons, obviously, that are examples for our lives. That's the idea every time that we pick somebody to talk about. And Eurípedes Barsanulfo, known as the Apostle of Charity, is that kind of person. The personality, what he did, and even though a lot of you probably are thinking, who is this guy, right? I've never heard of him, or something like that. But it's important that we, as we talk, that we make those bridges to our lives, to the things that he did that we believe that all of us can do. And that's the lesson, getting the example in our lives, because we can really do much more than we normally set up ourselves to do. So, Apostle of Charity, remember, thinking of charity, not in the very little sense of the word, but charity in a very broad way. Charity in love, in giving, in charity in all sorts of ways. When we say the word charity, immediately we think of donating something, giving something, especially material things. But we'll see that has nothing to do with him or what Spiritism is all about. As we normally learn, donating, obviously we are in the material world, we do need material things, and some people need even more because they don't have the minimum. So obviously we're talking about charity in all senses, but not only that kind of sense, okay? And I apologize if it's a little too small, the last, but that's okay. So this way you pay attention to me instead of what is written there. That's my, cheat sheet, not for you guys to read anyway. So we're talking about Eurípedes, who was this guy who was born in Minas Gerais, in Sacramento. That's the city. At the time was a little town. Minas Gerais is the state in Brazil. And he lived, how long did he live? 38 years. Okay? Then we're going to see what he did in 38 years. So we complain we don't have enough time. I'm already 51, I haven't done anything. So anyway, that's a good lesson for us. Apparently he was a common man. I mean, just like us. And that's the beauty of it, because sometimes what do we expect? We expect to think, to find people that they will be outstanding, but in a way that will be, I don't know, saints with those halos or some sort of thing that will determine that these are very special people. But this kind of person that in our everyday, he looked like a common person. But actually, he is a spirit that came from the highest spiritual spheres. And high, very high, and we're going to see how high, okay? He was an example of morality, superior morality, in the sense of living what Jesus taught us. Out of charity, there's no salvation. Like we said, out of love, there is no salvation, we can say. He lived that way all his life. And we talked in previous weeks, we talked about being charitable. What does that mean? And it is to give our time, our efforts, our energy in a way that we have pleasure to help others. Not like, oh boy, now I need to do this. So-and-so called me and he's in trouble, I needed to take care of him. And we're still in that kind of line of thought. We still measure every little single act of charity that we do. Barely we do it. And his life was completely based on doing charity and helping others. He's one of the most famous names in education in Brazil. He was the one who created the first Spiritist school in Brazil. But not only because it's Spiritist, that's a detail, but because that school, he wanted to develop the students as human beings in their integrity, physically, morally, intellectually, as an individual with the potential of growing and learning according to that individual, and not imagine at that time how this used to be. You didn't learn the way you're supposed to learn. What happened to us? They spanked the students. That's how the education was. Punishment. And, maybe some awards sometimes, but mostly giving them a hard time if they didn't learn. So he innovated these methods of teaching. So that was, again, this is just an introduction of our friend here. And he incorporated in his school the gospel. And we'll see how. He lived for the practice of goodness, truth, justice, logic, and order. He revived Jesus' steps in Sacramento, the town he was born, on the path of humbleness, forgiveness, and love. And he was a missionary of love. He was a remarkable medium. He had all kinds of mediumship on top of other things, based on the kind of spirit he was. We know that the more evolved we are, the more, it's easier to have this kind of connection with the spirituality. So it becomes more natural, with no effort made. And as a mission, not anymore as something that we need to have in order to redeem from mistakes. In his case, there was a mediumship. He was well known, he had several, but it was well known by healing, mediumship, and by corporeity. And let's go into that so we don't wander. What is by corporeity? This kind of mediumship is very rare, very special. And if you notice, let's go back there. Those are the mediums that we have a knowledge of having that kind of mediumship. That's how rare it is. We're talking about Francisco de Assis, and San Agustin.
No, San Antonio.
San Antonio, Santo Afonso, and there is a priest that Pio, who was they and Eurípedes Barsanulfo. Those are the spirits that we are aware of having that kind of mediumship. Okay, doesn't mean that there weren't others. There aren't others. I'm not saying that, but those are the most known for that. Okay. What it is like this. The medium is in trance. Okay, so you is sitting somewhere or lying down somewhere. He's almost sleeping, so he's not in activity. His body is just in trance. During that trance, what happens? His spirit per se, will go somewhere else. But not only that, but being somewhere else, his spirit can act upon matter. Is materialized, people can touch or see as the physical body. To the extent that Eurípedes Barsanulfo used to go and help delivering babies, having surgeries, and doing things like that in that situation. So he would be in school teaching. The students knew when he sat there and was really quiet not to bother him. Mm-hmm. Very good students, right? like you guys.
Like that.
And he would go in spirit. That's called out of body experience also, and perform like delivering a baby or things like that. So they would just wait, and he would come back. So that's the kind of a mediumship that he had. And why is this important? Why do we care? First of all, is an example of something that we only look at, we just see in books, right? When we have somebody who really had the experience in life, in real life, we say, oh, okay, so it's not only theory, okay? And the other thing is, that is part of knowing that as much as we grow, we evolve spiritually, the easiest it is for us to perform and understand the saying that Jesus said, that we could do everything he did and more. And he said that. So that's an example of something that people would say, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. And we don't believe in miracles. We believe in mediumship. And that's the kind of mediumship that looks like a miracle. Don't you agree? It sounds like it, right? But anyway, but it's not supernatural, therefore it's not a miracle. Anyway, he also developed other kinds of mediumship. So he was a clairvoyant. That means also being somewhere else and seeing what is going on in another place. The psychophony, which is when a medium receives communication through speaking. So a spirit will talk through the medium, in really talking through the voice, using the vocal cords. Automatic writing, all right, for some would say psychography, but automatic writing is the same thing. The spirit will use the hands of the medium to write a message. Healing, obviously, and special effects. Reading about his life, the people from the town used to say that every time he was preaching, he was teaching about Spiritism, he had a special mediumship that was almost like a megaphone. That it was very, like everybody would hear. It was like, whoa, how is that? Another kind of mediumship, when the voice is projected, but it's projecting people's mind. But that's a different story. We're not going to get into that. One peculiarity of his mediumship, when he was going to do any healing, he would not really examine the patient or look at the appearance of the disease, like when you go to the doctor. He was not a regular doctor, right? So he would ask for the age of the person. He was inspired by Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. That was one of his guides. And he would get the prescriptions. He would sit down, get a prescription, and he would get his assistants to manipulate the formulas for the homeopathic medication and give to the people that were there. Though nothing was charged, so that was given to them. And it was known that he had several cures, and he became very well known. Here are just a few examples of some of the spirits that communicate through Eurípedes Barsanulfo. And then you can see Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras, Mary, Jesus' mother, Maria Magdalena, John Baptist, John the Evangelist, Peter, Matthew, Lucas, James, Paul of Tarsus, Victor Hugo, etc., 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 etc. So those spirits that were very illuminated, not because they're well known. Obviously there was probably more that we just don't know the names. Those happen to be some that we know really well, right? Because it was that kind of spirit in the sphere of the illuminated spirits. But we talk about mediumship, and we always remember and remind ourselves that being a remarkable medium does not mean all the things that he performed. That was cool, it was great, wonderful. But the main thing about the mediumship is that he worked with love, helping people, helping the incarnated, discarnated, and what we used to call mediumship with Jesus, meaning with that purpose in mind, to help. not to be noticeable, not for any other reason, but to help others. And that was something that he could really, we can say that Eurípedes did throughout his whole life. Okay? Just a little summary. We still in the summary here, talking about Eurípedes, there is one passage in the book A Vida Escreve, or Life Writes, would be the translation. That was automatic writing by Chico Xavier. And there, this spirit that dictates the book, he is going to tell us about the most sublime episode of Eurípedes' life. And that is, in one of those experiences that he had out of the body experience, he is going to, they describe like this. He's sitting in trance like he used to, and he started going up and up and up. That's how he says in the book. I'm just saying. And suddenly he sees this, very, illuminated, very, very bright. And he gets closer, very timidly, because that's how he was. And there was Jesus crying. And I think I mentioned this passage here once before. And then he gets close to Jesus and says, okay, why are you crying? Are you crying because of those who don't believe in your teachings? And Jesus says, no, I am crying for those who know the gospel, who knows the teachings, and don't practice it. They don't do what they learned already what to do. So, since that moment, he never stopped working in the name of Jesus, helping others and working for others. That was all his life. Another part that shows us the kind of spirit he was, or person, when incarnated. Look at this statement by Chico Xavier in the book Eurípedes, O Homem e a Missão. Eurípedes, the Man and the Mission. A lot of these books are not translated, so that's why I kept in Portuguese the title, and I just put the translation, but it's not a real, I don't know if that would be the title when translated, okay? So I kept that way. So he said, writing about Eurípedes' life would be almost the same as writing a biography of Jesus. See, we're not talking about somebody who has no importance here. That's his words. And it's still in this book, they talk about this Emmanuel, that was the mentor of Chico. He says about Eurípedes that during the evangelical times, Eurípedes was taught by Ignacio, who was a pupil of John the Evangelist. Ignacio had become a preacher of the new era. Still a teenager, Eurípedes replaced his master, preaching in Palestine, where he had contact with John the Evangelist and was tortured. So there we go. We're talking about, it's an old spirit. We're old spirits. He's older, in the sense that he was created much before than we were. Therefore, see, I'm being nice to us, right? Because we look at somebody like that, go, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? How long will it take for us really to be this kind of spirit in the sense of evolution? Well, he had more time. So we're going to give ourselves some credit here to do it. We still have more time. So at that time, he was already preaching, he was already helping, he was already being tortured in the name of a belief that at that time required. Nowadays, we don't need to be tortured. We don't need that anymore. We can express ourselves. We can say what we feel. But even in the time that he was in Sacramento, was a major thing to say what he believed against some other beliefs. But he had that strength, the moral authority. Anyway, talking about Sacramento, okay? Everybody all right? Yeah? Okay. Talking about Sacramento, let's think about at that time. How was the situation in Sacramento for him, where the context where this all happened. Politically and economically and educationally, the conditions were similar to all the rest of the state. So Sacramento was a tiny town, but was in bad shape. Economy was based on agriculture and cattle breeding. No sewage system, no electricity, cool, right? Population lived in the rural areas, but the high society benefited from the agricultural production. Yeah, that's not new. Always somebody's benefiting from something. The church was the center of public and cultural activities, and the population during 1889, 1894 had 4,000 inhabitants, little town. Huge problems with transportation. It took an hour on horse to get to the nearest train station. So that story that I told you guys about him going somewhere, being as a spirit, that's a big advantage, right? Because, so you imagine, by the time the woman was in labor, the husband was able to get anywhere, right? That would be too late. So it was really good that he could help that way, because it was not as easy as just going, taking the car and going around the corner to the hospital. He had a very difficult childhood. So he was born on May 1st, 1880. His parents were Hermógenes Ernesto de Araújo, known as Senhor Mojico, okay? And the mother, and you see the pictures there. I think they took pictures in different times from the parents. Yes. You know, it looks slightly different. But anyway, just a little detail, you know, nothing very important, right? But anyway, a family of 15 kids. No. He was the third one, okay? So just there, it's a hard, okay? Anyway, his mother, he was in a Catholic family. Actually, his mother especially was very devoted. She was really, you know, going to church and so on. She had problems. They all had problems, health problems. Let's put it this way. Not all the 15. I don't know about the brothers and sisters, but the mother fainted. She had this faint, and she, especially when she got upset about something or she couldn't handle things really well. And nobody knew what it was, nobody could help, she couldn't get cured. And he, since he was very little, he was interested in trying to help her, even though he had no idea what to do. Okay? So he was always trying to find the cure, and he was always interested in reading medicine books, like us, right? We have a problem, we go, let's read some medicine books, right? Or in homeopathy.
Let's Google it.
Yeah, let's Google it. Anyway, but you know, that's what he started since very little. And his father was a store salesman. I put this peculiarity there just because I thought it was funny. His father had this habit of not giving the same last name for the children, in case one of them became famous, wouldn't bother the others. You know, I guess he was prepared that Eurípedes Barsanulfo would be famous. But anyway, I don't know. But he had this kind of idea about the family.
Every kid had a
different last name.
He just
yeah, I think he just picked the same way that he picked the first name, he picked the last name. Wow. Just because he didn't want to cause any problems. Well, that's what the books say. So anyway, I assume so, because the reference in the books of the siblings, they're all different. You wouldn't say that they were siblings for that reason. They're not Barsanulfo everywhere. They're all different, has all different last names. But anyway, they were very poor. Since, you know, his birth, or since forever, they were very poor. A lot of financial difficulties. At the age of 5, he started his education. That was immediately interrupted because he was, they moved to this close to this train station called Cipó, and he started working, helping with keeping the horses, putting the horses away, cleaning the horses, and carrying luggage from the train station. So he stopped. He goes back at the age of 9. They decided to go back. Oh, I forgot to say that his father was also sick. He had this syndrome called Berry, or Berry, I don't know, and which gives you a lot of weakness. You don't feel well. The muscles are weak, and you have problems in the stomach, and so on and so forth. There is a list of things that this causes. So father was also sick. At the age of 9, he fell sick with malaria. And then everybody was getting sick, it was bad. They decided that it was better to go back to Sacramento. There was a better chance, apparently in Cipó, that was happening, and they moved, which was a good move. Actually, his father was able to end up acquiring this fabric store, textile store, and called Casa Mojico, his name, and very original. And you have some pictures here of the train station and the store. And then his situation got a little better, financial situation. Okay? These are just to get an idea of his life. But then he had a very enlightened youth. I mean, he lived 38 years. Right? At a certain point, he had to show the enlightenment because the childhood was very hard. But he was a very evolved spirit. So he treated everybody equally. He was very proper, very nice. And since he was a child, he always liked the idea of helping the poor, the sick, the elderly, and so on. It came, our spiritual baggage, right? We always talk about this. Whoever we are, we bring with us. It's not something, some things are not taught. They just are part of our spirit. And that's who he was already. Anyway, like we said, he constantly studied and researched different subjects, especially medicine, and he tutored his siblings as well. His father told him he had to tutor them. Oh, just 14 of them. That's easy. Right? Homeschooling. Before 18 years of age, he started a homeopathic pharmacy in his own house to help the cure of the poor. So he was already poor. His father did a little better, so now time to give back, right? So he was able to start his own pharmacy. He was an autodidact. Where's Ricardo? When you self-teach, right? You're able to teach your own self about something. He didn't go to college. He was going to, but then his mother decided to have one of those, she fainted. Maybe I'll try that on my kids. Right?
I think
I'll faint. And then he gave up on going. He stayed home, right? Didn't work with my daughter, so I guess it doesn't. Anyway, before 20 years of age, he co-founded Irmandade de São Vicente de Paulo. So this is like an institution to help the poor, the sick, all the same things that he used to do. In the Catholic Church, he was still Catholic there, guys. Okay, we're talking about a missionary, not a spiritist per se. He turned into spiritism later in his life. But he already was working with the poor, helping them. He was a secretary. He had a bunch of titles. And we think that we work too hard. He was also involved in art. He was the director of the Literary Musical Society at the small town. Probably he did a little bit of everything. A small town, imagine. They all needed him. Found a weekly newspaper at the age of 21 called Gazeta de Sacramento. And in 1902, he was ready to go. That's when he was ready to go to Rio, and his mother had one of her crises, and he gave up going. He stayed home. He couldn't leave her there suffering. Okay? So he taught himself a bunch of subjects, reading, studying, researching, no Google, okay? Everything in books, looking for those dictionaries like old times. And he found with other teachers this school called Liceu Sacramentano. And at that time, he already had this image, this idea of being an educator meant to transmit to the kids all the knowledge, but not the knowledge just of the books, the feelings, who they are, getting to help them develop the love for learning and use that in their lives. And that was for him an evangelical in the sense of, it was religious in the sense of the most comprehensive sense. The good feelings, not an institution religion, not that kind of religious, but the kind that we should all belong to, which is the religion that connects us to God. That was his feeling, that should be an educator. He was also a municipal deputy. And this was interesting because they explain in the books that he was invited to be, which in Portuguese we call vereador, which is in the city. That's why municipal in his city to be a politician. And he didn't want to mix up things. It took him a while to accept that, but then he gets inspiration from the spiritual guides, and he's saying, look, that is a perfect way for you to help your town. And that's another light at the end of the tunnel, right? We don't need to think of politicians as bad guys. Not at all. They have the power to change things, to help, to make our lives better, right? When do we start doing that? We'll see. And some will do, or already do, okay? And he, at his time, he brought to his town a lot of improvements. Piped water, electricity, the streetcar. Remember, there was no transportation. Public cemetery. I wonder how they did it before that. But anyway, so he did a lot of things during his youth. Okay, so far, everybody impressed? Please be. Okay, good.
I'm already feeling.
All right. I was so impressed that I decided to talk about him. So, anyway. But then we're going to say, all right, where does Spiritism come in place? That he was 25 when he was very concerned about this uncle. See the picture there? It's not him. Looks alike, right? Looks like his uncle. At least the mustache. But he was concerned about this uncle. He was part of the family, like the black sheep side of the family that they had in the farm. Santa Maria was the name of the farm. They had medianimus, I can say meetings. Yes, thank you. And they study Spiritism. At the time, they say, these are crazy people. This is for crazy people. Some people still think that way. But anyway, we don't. So at the time he was worried about this uncle and the other relatives because they had this kind of meetings besides studying Spiritism. Then one day, after bugging his uncle a lot for a long time, his uncle decides to give him a copy of the book After Death, Depois da Morte, by Leon Denis. And he devours the book. Basically, he can't stop reading the book. He'll read it in one night, the book. And in the morning, he reads again. Because he feels that there's so much logic to what is said there. He started believing because when he talks about reincarnation, that was the only possibility to explain about the imbalances in life. All these differences, all the contrasts, all the problematic of the world, right? Social, economically, all sorts of problems, differences that we see that couldn't be explained in one life because God would be picking people to be poor, to be rich, to be sick, to be, healthy, to be nice or bad, and this and that. So he says, that makes sense. And then his uncle says, so why don't you come to one of our meetings, right? That was the chance. And he went. He went to the meeting, but he was not, especially communication with the spirits, with the incarnated world. And he's like, I'm not sure about that. So what he does, he mentally thinks in the meeting, he sees the medium called Aristides, and he was a very simple man, uneducated, could barely really, say properly the sentence and stuff. And he says, mentally he says, well, okay, so if this exists, I would like to hear, by this medium, an explanation of this, the Sermon of the Mountain. Is that the way to say in English? Mm-hmm. I got a little confused. Okay. And then, but he didn't say it to anybody, he just thought, right? And guess what happened? Our friend Aristides, he started and gave him a detailed explanation of the sermon, and in a language, in a form delivered that could not be Mr. Aristides talking, because he couldn't talk that way. And for those of you who have had the experience of hearing a medium who says things that is completely different than, especially the way that he or she talks, not only words, but especially the property of the sentences, and how in the difference of somebody who studied a lot, and this person hadn't really had an education, and that's not what he showed when he was bringing, the spirit was talking, not Aristides. So then he got convinced there should be something there. So on top of this, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes also came in the meeting via another medium, that is his uncle, and said that there was in the meeting his spiritual guide, or one of them, that was Vicente de Paulo, and that he had a message to him. And let's hear the message. Not hear, read the message. You can hear, I will read. Okay, so he said that immediately he should disconnect himself from the Irmandade Vicente de Paulo, because that was the way for him to position himself as a spiritist and taking over what he was meant to do. He had a mission, and his mission he had to disassociate himself with the church, because the two things wouldn't, it's not that they didn't like it, the church wouldn't accept him. That was basically the situation. And he says, because he would then start the dissemination of Spiritism and his mission. And that's what Vicente de Paulo says. The good spirits will do several tasks together with you. Charity, my son, is our banner. Your main work is healing, and Bezerra de Menezes will help you in this area. Everything is planned, and actually it is Jesus who directs us. In other words, there was a plan, and that's now he's ready to follow at 25. So at that same night, he also experienced other kinds of mediumship, and therefore that's when he became Spiritist. He gets home, like when I said that to my mother, and the parents freaked out, like, what are you talking about, right? And then he showed the book. He talked to his mom about the reincarnation. He explained the logic, that what had made him feel what he was feeling. And she accepted, and she also started right then supporting him. His father took a little longer, but already not much longer they start supporting him in his plans. So he became Spiritist. And that was a mess, it was complicated. In a small town where they consider Spiritism something crazy, or for crazy people, the prejudice, and he had a lot of trouble, from the others. They thought it was something related to the devil. Some religions still do, by the way, right? They don't understand. The thing about communicating with the spirits has to be something with the devil. That's what some people think. And we know there's nothing to do with it. But at the time, it was even harder. And so he started a group, a Spiritist group called Esperança y Caridade, Hope and Charity. So he didn't waste any time, huh? I'm Spiritist, let's study, let's work, let's do it, right? Not 4 years studying before we decide if we have time, that kind of thing, right? Anyway, so he talked about Spiritism in public. You go like in the middle of this of the town, the district that was very poor, the poorest one called Zagalia, and he would also continue this case. Now that's when he really started performing more cures, not only with the medication, but these other issues about mediumship start getting more and more part of his life. And cures of, really, we're talking about diseases like tuberculosis that killed at the time. I would say leprosy, in English. So imagine, so it was not something small, and also small, but also big things. And here I just thought it was interesting for us to talk about. His pharmacy became very popular. Obviously, he was curing, giving medication, right? I would go there right now, if he was there. But it became popular. A lot of people. The clergy didn't like it because they decided to look for the medium and not the church for that. But they also didn't complain too much, a little bit, because they start building pensions, like little hotels, home hotels, for an amount of people. Up to this day, by the way, still people go to visit Sacramento to see what he did and go to places, the school and everything. So, but what I thought was interesting, that they narrate some phenomena that happen in the pharmacy. And one of them was like, sometimes if there was an error, like the assistant was putting together the medication, there was an error, suddenly he heard, or she, tapping on the shelf or the glass, so I said, oops, okay, what am I doing wrong? It would call the attention for the person to go and check. The other thing that was interesting, sometimes they were having trouble to find the medication on the shelves, and suddenly the medication fall from the shelf. Another thing is, sometimes somebody would get there and ask for a medication. Eurípedes, would say something like, oh, I don't think you need that medication anymore. Go back, the relative was already dead, right? And the person, of course, didn't believe it, sometimes got upset even that he didn't want to give the medication, and the story got confirmed afterwards. Some things that are just for our curiosity, just for that, but was interesting. So the clergy continued saying that he had something to do with the devil. That was not normal, what was going on. And there is one point that they decided, they start using the newspaper to, of course, the words, to badmouth Spiritism in him, and saying things that had nothing to do with the truth. And the priest, the local priest, invites him for a debate, a public debate. And he didn't like those confrontations, but he didn't want the wrong things that were being published about Spiritism to continue. So he goes to the choir, right? Is it a choir that is in the middle of in front of the church? What is that called? Where you, like a gazebo, right? That they have in front of the small towns and in front of the church. And they have this debate. And there are books with what happened in debates, all the questions. It's very interesting. Obviously, we don't have time to get into this, but they end up he clarifies everything, and they say, and everybody, was clapping, because he was able to explain very simply about Spiritism without any confrontation, without any problem. And the priest was not happy, but he accepted what the Eurípedes had to say, and everything was clarified. Okay, but of course, since they were not happy, and a lot of people, or most people, were Catholic in town, what did they do? They decided to get their kids away from his school, the Liceu Sacramentano. And he was about to close the doors. Kids had left, teachers had left, and as he was very sad, thinking, he gets the message from Mary, saying, don't close the doors. Instead, change the name of the school to Colégio Allan Kardec, and add once a week, on Wednesdays, the lessons on Spiritism and a course of astronomy. Don't ask me why. That part, I didn't go that far. I just saw that. And so he does, and he founded then the Colégio Allan Kardec in 1907. That's it's an updated, it's painted probably nicely. That's how it looks more recently. Okay, everybody with me here? Nobody sleeping yet? Good? Okay. Well, so that was the first Spiritist school in the country. See the picture, see he's sitting there right in front with the students. And the students start coming. They really, there was not required to have the lesson if the student didn't want. But they ended up doing it not because of Spiritism per se, but the values to the students. The talk about the gospel, about how to be a good person. That was the idea behind the teaching the Spiritism. So, and they had those techniques that we talked about, new techniques of understanding, trying to give the opportunity to every student to develop their potential. And so he became very admired by his peers in this area. Okay, so for him, education would form a virtuous character and stimulate religious feelings, not accumulating knowledge, but guiding the students towards the path of goodness. So, same thing we said before. To the extent that in this school, he founded this association, I translate the best I could, from Association of the Little Friends of the Poor. So everybody in the school, they got things from home, asked the families, and they had auctions to get money to buy food, help the sick, the elderly, and the ones that were abandoned. So that was part of learning in the school, which we miss this part, right? Actually, it's said that even when you talk about God sometimes, especially in public schools, they don't like it because not everybody believes. Why are we going to say that? But anyway, at this school, that was part of the curriculum. He taught, it's misspelled, astronomy, looking at the sky, at classes of botanic and zoology in the fields, talked about God. So they were very open-minded teachers, and the students learning about several subjects in a very broad way. And look, he had deep knowledge. Remember again, he learned himself of medicine, law, astronomy, philosophy, mathematics, physics, and literature. And that was his philosophy. The student is an immortal spirit with autonomy to build his own destiny in successive lives. Therefore, one should respect the individuality of each one of the students. So that was the philosophy of his school. apparently, nowadays it's more like a regular school. He lost a lot of what he had left. Okay, some stories, like we said about the bicorpority, mediumship. He was able to, in a previous incarnation, he had been a doctor in France. So when he was in that out of the body experience, that he also had more of the opportunity of bringing back what he had as an eternal spirit. So our baggage, as we know, our spiritual baggage, it stays with us. We don't remember everything that we did in the past, but because of the level of spirit he had more access to it. It was more, easier to get to it. So he could do that. When he was not in that experience, and he would do the cures and the kind of work he did for healing with the help of Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. So he only had that access when he was into that out-of-body experience. And these examples, books like this, that bring these two examples I'm going to give to you at the end, they all, or this one, they give names of the people that either were cured, because some people are still alive. We're talking about last century, yes, but older people, but they are alive. Others are descendants that they knew from their parents or grandparents before. They had pictures, they collected information, letters by Eurípedes Barsanulfo. Talked to some people that had documented stuff from that time, from the school, from all the activities that we talked about. So anyway, still I know some people don't believe a thing that I'm saying, but that's a different story. Or they might not. But just to tell you that those books, they're not automatic writing. They are books that are like a documentary in writing from researched by these people that wrote from that time. Okay, just so we know. One story that they say is the story of that he was in the classroom, and he goes into that trance. He tells us, when he comes back, he tells the students, look, there will be a guy that will come shortly, right? And he will, and then the guy comes, and I say, let me talk to him. He says, I came here to get you to go and help my wife. She's about to have a baby. And he says, you can go back because I've been already there. You have a baby girl, healthy, everything is fine. The guy looks at him and says, but I didn't, there was one row, right? One little row. He said, I didn't see you going there, I think you got confused or something, And please come with me. She's really in pain. She needs your help. And Eurípedes didn't want to confront him or say, he went. As he gets there, the lady looks at him with the baby, healthy and beautiful, and so on. And then she says, oh, Dr. Eurípedes, why are you back here? Everything is okay. Didn't you tell my husband that you already helped me? And so he goes back and continues what he was doing in school. So that kind of situation that would help with him. Or another one, that somebody by the name of Jerônimo Gomes that worked at the school, one day he sees Eurípedes sitting under a tree. He thinks he's sleeping. Of course, he was in trance. He comes back, and then he says to him, oh, Jerônimo, I was with Dona, or Miss Mariquinha, right, is her name? And her daughter just died an hour ago or some time ago. And, kind of go, you can help. See if she needs something. And Jerônimo looks at him and said, but she was fine yesterday. She was playing. She was, it doesn't make any sense. So he says, no, she died. And he explained what she had, and she died. Well, of course, Geronimo doesn't believe it, and he sneaks out and goes to check. Then he comes back thinking that Eurípedes didn't know, and Eurípedes is sitting there, and he goes, so you double-checked, she's really dead, right? And then he said, well, yeah, but how do you know? And he said, well, I went with you when you went there in spirit. But, should be something very unusual for everybody to say, oh, this guy is really telling the truth, right? And then in 1918, there is the Spanish flu epidemic. And of course, a lot of people start getting sick and dying. And he continued helping everybody. And he ended up getting infected by it. In a few days, he died. He knew the date. That's what it says, that he already had told some friends that that was the date he was going to go. So, but he continues working on the other side of life, disseminating Spiritism, Jesus' love, helping everybody. And the way that we know, we've been studying this book, right? And it's exactly about a hospital that Eurípedes Barsanulfo asked the permission to have built in the spirituality to help mediums from the earth, from this incarnated world, that failed in their work, that had planned to do certain things and didn't do it. And as they get to the other side of life, they need help. And he organized, and that's shows in the description in this book, that the way that this hospital works. And I thought it was interesting, the names, and I translated, obviously, so it was something like this: love therapy, music therapy, fluid therapy, that one we know, work therapy, look at this, right? And others, there are other kinds. But I thought it was interesting, through all these therapies, he, together with a huge other amount of spirits in his team, help the mediums that haven't done what they were supposed to do, which is, remember, to do the work of mediumship to help others, to learn, especially to grow spiritually, to work on our inner transformation. So when we are mediums and just pointing fingers to others because we know it all, or we see, or this or that, with a different intention than helping not only the spirituality, but especially who is here with us, working with us, then we can get a little unbalanced, let's put it this way, as we get to the other side. And then we need help, and Eurípedes is there helping. His first communication from the spiritual world happened in 1950 through automatic writing by Chico Xavier. And since then he has communicated many messages by Eurípedes Barsanulfo, by other mediums, not only Chico Xavier, always emphasizing his valuable teachings. So, just to conclude what we saw here, right? We talked about this person who lived 38 years on earth, very evolved spirit, example in everything he did, especially because of his moral superiority. And when you say superiority, remember, it's no judgmental value. It means everything is relative, right? So that means he is in a very good position spiritually, that's all, okay? Compared to a lot of people, that's all. He founded this school that brought different values, changed the way that people saw then. And if you think now, we're closer to, not in the sense of talking about God or these values, but at least helping the potential. So that was good feeling. I think we moved towards that direction from the time that my mother used to go to school and got spanked when she didn't do it right, to the point now where we have teachers and all kinds of help for the kids that have difficulties, need extra help, and have other kinds of situations, or they're special, more talent, they need some more motivation to take advantage of the way that they think they learn. They also learn differently. So he implemented all that for the education we talked about. Yeah, he was the heir of Kardec's teachings. He learned Spiritism not just by the books, but he lived the things that he learned, the same way that we're all trying to put in practice those principles that not only here, that's the easiest place for us to talk about it and be good and be nice and smile, etc., etc. But in our everyday lives, how we are really living our lives. So that's something we have to learn from him, we should learn, I guess. He was a politician, engaged on projects for social improvement, an example of the real use of the power benefiting the society. So it is possible. We should not just stay in disbelief. We should work towards those that are there, send them good vibrations. We get to a point where we say, nobody there can do anything, right? So this, I thought, was a good message for us to know that it is possible. It depends who is in power, and that we can really support those that are trying hard. Okay, he was an intellectual, because he brought also a lot of this from before, but because he applied himself. He taught himself a bunch of things. He researched, he dedicated himself with also in mind how to use all that intellectual knowledge towards those that are less privileged, that need his help. So, as an instrument of high spiritual hierarchy, cure diseases that were challenges like leprosy and tuberculosis. So, this is part of working on our potential as mediums, as eternal spirits, right? We believe that we have several reincarnations to improve ourselves, to become better people, to be able to perform a lot of different things towards goodness. But this is a process that we are working on. We can't just give up. It's part of the message for us that I thought that was, if not the most important, one of the big messages from this personality, this person we talked about, was to remind us that we are capable to perform all this, that we are able to learn more, to apply ourselves more, to be able to forgive more, to love more. There is a lot there that we are still learning. But when we see happening by one person or another in different levels, it gives us that punch that we need to continue in this path. That sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes we're trying to do the best and something happens and you go, why am I doing this? We doubt ourselves, we doubt what we learn, we doubt the humanity, we think that it's not worth it. And we're very negative in general, but we don't have to be, right? When we look at the world and we see how many problems there are, let's stop focusing on the problems. Let's look at somebody like this, or even less than this. People that are doing something to make their part, to make a better world for all of us and our children in the future. And in this transition of the planet to become a planet of regeneration, we will need those people. We need to be those people. So he was for me an example of all that. And he's remembered with love by the Spiritist movement. So even if not everybody knows, see, he's not worried. He was not worried about being internationally known, right? He was happy helping where he was. And like Divaldo Franco said, let's blossom where we are planted. Sometimes we worry that we're not doing enough because we are not doing, people don't know what we are doing. Or because we think that we should be doing more. So just let's do what we can to make our planet a better place. And this is not just talk. I'm not a politician, so I'm not getting any votes. It's just the fact that that's what really matters. It's not the title. He was Catholic, then he was a Spiritist, but he was a politician, he was an educator, you can name it. But every single area and every moment, he did something special. And so, let's be special. That's it. Okay, thank you.